and all of it kind of then we didn't even have visas when we were working there. We used to have to go to Singapore every 2 months because we'd only have or 2 or 3 months because we'd only have a 90-day visit visa, and then we'd have to go over to Singapore for a couple of days and come back in and get another stamp on our passport. And the government authorities, they raided a couple of the offices during that time, and people were kicked out. Barings got a little bit worried about the number of people that we had in Jakarta, so they sent everybody else home, and I was left there on my own for a short period of time.
Where did you go next?
From Jakarta, I came back to London. I'd obviously made a bit of a name for myself, or I'd improved upon my name during that period. Did a bit of work in business development. So from London, it was a new department that they'd just set up. So I was travelling a lot, setting up offices in Germany. And then Singapore popped up as a location where they wanted to upgrade their membership. And it combined a love of Asia and the Asian lifestyle, the warm weather, everything else. And a background in futures and options. So for me, it was the ideal opportunity, and I grabbed it with both hands. And everybody else agreed that it would be a good move for me, and that I was the right person for the job. Everybody messed up there, didn't they? But because it went wrong fairly quickly when I got out to Singapore,
So how much were you initially authorised to trade?
Initially, nothing. It was setting up the operation. So we were doing, we were order filling. So we were broking for other people. So most of the decision making was in Japan. So we had an arbitrage desk, and we had an equity trading desk, and they would do some order execution through Singapore. The main market was Japan, right? Singapore was just an offshoot. It had a similar product. It traded the Nikkei 225. So if you didn't have liquidity in Osaka or in Tokyo, that business could shift through to Singapore, and that's what happened during that period. And it happened fairly quickly. Markets were falling, so there were circuit breakers kicking in Japan, and a lot of the business was coming through Singapore, and Singapore wasn't ready for it. It was a very immature market. Didn't have a lot of people with a lot of expertise. And, with hindsight, not at the time, but with hindsight, that kind of all fell into place for what was about to happen. Not that it was in any way planned that way, but when you look back at it, and you're looking at levels of incompetence and negligence that are just absurd, right? Absolutely absurd. In an industry that everybody believes is complex and populated by the brightest people, the level of stupidity is just astounding, and that includes me. I'm not trying to get away from it myself, but it's just bonkers. Like, everybody thinks I was a scapegoat. I wasn't a scapegoat. I did it all on my own. I took every single trade that during that period that led to the collapse of the bank. Just everybody around me was, I don't know if they were switched off, they were looking the other way, or they were just plain stupid.
Let's go over this trade slowly then. How do you get authorised in the beginning to trade with X amount of money? Who authorises that? And what due diligence do they do on your skill set to authorise that?
It could be some quick answers to that. Well, obviously, it's not like working in, not that I work in an organisation these days, but you've got policies, you've got procedures, you've got systems, and probably people are working through these rule books of what you do on day one, and then what do you do after you've done the first part of that, and this is how your life and your business works within it. Everything at the time, certainly at Barings Securities, was you learn on your feet, right? The guy next to you is the guy who's teaching you what to do, and he's passing down his experience and his expertise, and you're learning from that. So The way that it all came together is we were doing a lot of order execution for the guys in Tokyo. So you start to get close to them, what they're doing, you understand what they're doing, and you look to see if there's any other ways that you can arbitrage that business a little bit better, because a lot of it was arbitrage, because you've got a lead market in Japan and then you've got a secondary market in Singapore. So the secondary market is always looking at the lead market and the prices could be a little bit out of line. So I started to take advantage of some of those for the guys in Tokyo. And, it starts slowly. You're doing small size. And then the lady who was looking after the options book at the time, she's got a fairly big options book that she's trading all of the time. But she's not hedging it because, she's got the delta's changing by a small amount throughout the course of the day. And she can do extra hedges, gamma hedging that they would call it, in order to guard against these smaller movements, and you can make money out of doing that. So she asked me to do some of that for her. So it kind of all comes together, and it's it's not it's not a path that's laid out, but it's you're getting closer to these people. They're getting more confident in you. You've got a better relationship with them, and ultimately, everything during that period is a breach of trust. It's a breach of confidence as well. But it's all growing together. But it's not. I don't think I ever sat down, and we did used to have. At the end of the year, you'd have a meeting about what your bonus was going to be, and then they'd set out what you were going to be doing for the following year. Whether any of those actually went the way that they were supposed to, I can't even remember what those are called. What are they called at the end of the year when you get a performance review or one of those sort of things. But part of it was, in the next 12 months you'll be doing this. This was a job that you learnt on your feet, and you were, as the markets aren't the same, from one day to the next. And so the job is always very, very different. It's always developing, it's changing. There's opportunities within it. You've got, derivatives on derivatives, and the products are always changing. So there's always plenty going on. You're just not, I don't think you follow a straightforward career path that you might do in a different industry. But it's performance, and it's, there's a little bit of who there's a lot of what and there was opportunity at that time as well.
Let me try and re-express that for the lay people then. So there's a certain type of weather that Nick is trading in, and he's being successful in this type of weather. And when you get successful in this type of weather, your confidence builds, and the confidence of your colleagues around you trust in you builds. But like you said, the stock market is changeable, and all kinds of weather is lurking out there, ready to come in and destroy everything you have built up. That's what we're getting to, folks, I think.
Yeah, it got a bit stormy.
Let's go over the trades then. I mean, what amount were you initially authorised to trade?
So initially, it's arbitrage, right? So you're buying in one location, you're selling in the other. So theoretically, there is no exposure.
Yeah.
Right. There's a bit of execution risk because you've got the time between you doing those sort of two things.
You're covered.
But you're covered, and that's the theory behind it. So in terms of being given a position limit at that time, in the early days it didn't exist. Later on, I'm authorised to trade 250 lots of Nikkei 225. So notional value of that is probably, £1 million, something like that. And, so that's the maximum exposure you can have at any one time with that execution risk. I traded many times that number, and the deeper and deeper I'm getting into the situation, the bigger those trades are becoming. The risk that you're taking on, the frenzied sort of nature of it all. it's just taking on a life of its own.
The sun's out now, folks. His colleagues are out bathing with the deck chairs and the cervezas and
Counting their bonus, wondering what car they're going to buy, whether three houses is being greedy. Yeah, no, there was definitely a bit of that, Sean, definitely.
So it went from $1 million to what?
In terms of some of the trades?
Just let's gradually go over how you were authorised to have more and more money.
No, from that point on, it's all unauthorised.
Unauthorised?
It's all unauthorised.
All right, so your cap was $1 million.
Yeah.
And how did you breach that then? Take us through those trades as it got... Because there's a part in the movie where you go, I just lost £50 million in one day. How do we get from what you're saying now to that?
Yeah, that was a good day. There were some worse days than that.
We want the details.
Unbelievable. No,
slowly.
Obviously the position. So the way that it started off. So as I said to you earlier, the circuit breakers were kicking in Japan. All of this business was then shifting to Singapore because for those who would have been aware of the markets at the time, and Sean will definitely have an analogy to bring to this anyway, but when the circuit breakers kicked in, everybody was putting in sell orders, so they were backing up these sell orders, and that meant that the market didn't open in Japan for that day. So the market had ticked down, and there'd be a limit to how far it could go down, maybe 700 points. So all of the business was in Singapore. So we went from doing 2,000 contracts a day, the whole market, to doing 20,000 contracts a day. So you're writing out your tickets, you're giving your tickets to a runner's going and trying to put that into a computer. The other side of the trade is doing exactly the same, and hopefully in the middle they match. The first thing that happens is the systems can't cope with, or the computers can't cope with the volume. So you've got all of these tickets, they're stacking up, they're not matching, and it's taken until 4 o'clock in the morning to actually match the trades. So, if you were working in London or if you're working in Chicago and one of the exchanges there, you've got to match the trades within 30 minutes, right? That's the rule. That was the rule in Singapore. But because of the volume, the lack of expertise, the lack of experience and poor systems, it was taking, 12 hours to match a trade. So you've got all of this exposure that you're trying to keep control of. And then later on in the evening, and I used to have to do this, I'd go back to the office at, say, 11 o'clock at night and still be trying to match these trades off. And maybe you've got a clearer picture by 2 or 3 in the morning, and one of the girls who was picking up the phone, who shouldn't have been picking up the phone because she didn't have any experience, she placed the order the wrong way, because it's all done with hand signals. So if you want to buy, if you sell, you're going that way, and you use your face and your head for the numbers and the prices that you're trading at. And so we've realised at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, she's done the trade the wrong way. There's a 10 grand error. But we've got a position as well, right? Because we've got to make the customer good. So the customer gets the trade that he wanted, but we've got a position because it's wrong. Plus we've made the customer good. So we've got a bigger position. And then the very next morning I go down, I speak to the head of operations in Singapore. So like 7 o'clock in the morning, he's in his office. I just walk in, I explain it to him. He doesn't really understand futures and options. So he asked me to refer it to the head of trading back in London, right? But he's not going to be at his desk for 7 hours. So, and that's a frightening conversation, right? So this is me just starting out in Singapore, trying to make a name for myself. I've got the opportunity that I want, but it's starting to blow up on me. So I've done the right thing to a degree. I've gone and seen Simon Jones, who headed up that department in Singapore. He's told me to refer it to Andrew Bayliss in London, and I've gone back and I've sat at my desk, and the markets are opening up in 15 minutes. And I've got this really scary conversation with Andrew Bayliss. And I think one of the things that we were all very conscious of at the time is that you see and hear things about what's going on within the organisation, and somebody had lost their job because they'd lost a little bit of money, and you're fearful of that, right? So I've now got this period, 15 minutes before the market opens, 7 hours or 6 or 7 hours before Andrew Bayliss is going to be at his desk. And if the market opens up at the right level, nobody's going to know about the error. I don't have to tell London, right? And that's the chance that I took. Markets open, they continue to keep falling. It's getting worse and worse throughout the day. I'm now more complicit. Do I cut that error, which is already worse than it was when I went to see Simon Jones a few hours ago? Or do I take the opportunity that we're going to get back to that level? Yeah. And I made the wrong decisions.
There's smoke coming out the volcano now, folks.
There is a volcano later in this story.
Yeah.
But so now I'm getting to the end of that day. You know, Simon Jones, he just deflects it, right? He's, refer it to London. He's not bothered about it. That's not interrupting the rest of his day. I haven't told Bayliss, so I've now got a position that's the same size as it was at the beginning of the day, but it's just more loss making. So it goes into the illegal 5/8 account, which is where I hid the losses.
What was the loss at this point?
It's probably gone from $10,000 up to 40 or 50. So it's a fairly, as you described at the beginning with your description, it's escalated and escalated quickly. But the thing is, I'm now, as much as I wouldn't have wanted there to be an error earlier that morning and wouldn't wanted to have that block my copybook, it wasn't me that made the error, but now I'm part of it because I've let it run. I know I'm supposed to cut it. I know I'm supposed to refer it up the line, and I've done none of those things, and it's now my error. And it's in the 5/8 account, and I'm concealing it. And hopeful that over the next few days I'm gonna be able to get this back. Like, I'm expecting a knock on the door every single minute of every single day. Every time the phone rings, I'm fuck me, what are they going to say now? Right? This is it. Somebody's going to expose what's going on. Because when I worked at Morgan Stanley, this is the sort of stuff that I did, right? If somebody's, I'd check positions before 7 o'clock in the morning. If your position didn't agree, the trader wasn't allowed to trade. My positions never agreed. But nobody was asking me those questions. But every time somebody came in the door, I was like, that was it. It was going down at that minute. And you were living completely on your nerves. And that's the way that it went for weeks, completely living on your nerves. And then people aren't asking you the questions. They're not asking you why the position doesn't agree, because the position didn't agree, right? That position didn't agree for nearly 3 years.
How many days before it was into a loss of 6 figures?
I can't give you well, it's not going to be long, right, is going to be the answer to your question. Because now, not only is that loss getting bigger on that original position, I'm making the position bigger, doubling down, if you like, so that I don't have to go so far to get it back, yet the market's still going against me. So it's that gambling mentality, that chasing, if you like. I'm chasing that loss in order to get it back so that I can close that position down and start my life again. Right? That's the motivation. That's where I want to get to. But I'm just getting the markets aren't behaving.
Is this post a bubble in the Japanese stock market and it starts to go down? It doesn't recover, does it?
No.
Okay.
No. So
you're on that curve going down.
100%. Yeah. I mean, when I went out to Singapore, the Nikkei 225, just to give you some numbers, Nikkei 225 was trading around 39,000. When I left Singapore, 2.5 years, 3 years later, it's down at 17,000. And that's a one-way journey, a journey that I'm going in the opposite direction of. And then fairly soon after I left Singapore, the Japanese market went down to about 9.
I remember because
it's back up at 40 now.
When it peaked, it was worth more than the US stock market, wasn't it? And the real estate in Japan was just insane.
Yeah.
So how long before there's concealed losses in the millions?
Well, we're talking about a period there that is probably July 1992. And these are the ones I can give you guaranteed numbers off. By September of 1992, the loss is $5 million. And the reason why I know it's $5 million is we've got an audit. So the auditors are coming in. So up until that point, what I was doing, it's always described as a clever or a complex fraud. And it was the most simple thing that you've ever seen. And it was, it was so crude, the stuff that I was doing. It's just unbelievable, when you look back at it. So the only day that the accountant would pick up the balance sheet was the last day of the month, right? So she wouldn't pick it up on any other day. If you picked it up on any other day, there'd be a huge hole in the balance sheet, which was the loss in the 5/8 account. But she never did that. So there was no quality testing. On the last day of the month, I'd have to give her the balance sheet. And as long as the 5/8 account was zero, she wouldn't be able to interrogate it any further. So it had to be zero on the last day of the month. So I just used to credit the 5/8 account and debit a commission income account. Bonkers stuff, right? But I did that. So I did that for 3 or 4 months.